There's certainly going to be a contrast in wind strengths as we move throughout Thursday night. The isobars are going to be spacing their way out across parts of Scotland and certainly the northern half of the UK, bringing fairly light winds. However, we are tracking this low pressure centre that's going to be pushing into southern areas, and the squeeze in the isobars here is going to bring gales, certainly across coastal areas, severe for a time, potential for up to 60-70 mile an hour gusts. And so there is a wind warning in force, and do take care if you are travelling out here. Rain pushing its way in across many southern areas, but it will stay drier across the north, and that's where we see those clearer spells, and that will allow temperatures to drop down a bit more into mid-single figures. But underneath the cloud will be a fairly mild night and a fairly mild start to Friday. It is, though, going to be, again, another windy one and a wet one. Another rain warning in force, particularly across parts of Devon and Cornwall, where we could see some of that rain really persist throughout the day. And it, for many of us, will be a fairly grey day on the whole. Particularly across eastern areas where we see a cool breeze feeding in from the North Sea and the cloud being particularly persistent. Some areas may not see higher than 8-9 degrees or so. But western areas of Scotland probably seeing the best of the brightness throughout the day. Into the evening, we've got to watch this trailing occluded front that's going to be stalling across parts of southwest England into Wales and through Northern Ireland, and really that's going to be with you as you wake up on Saturday morning as well, to provide a fairly damp start to the day here. But again, it's going to be another cloudy one for a lot of us. Western Scotland still holding on to a bit of that sunshine, but less so than we saw on Friday. Some drizzle pushing into far eastern coasts of Scotland and England as well throughout the day. That unsettled theme looks like it will abate a bit thanks to the high pressure that's going to be pushing its way in for Sunday, but we do just, again, have to watch out for further fronts that want to start pushing its way in as we move into the new working week. But for now, though, Sunday certainly looking like the better day of the weekend. Bye-bye.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one.
Let's respectfully disagree, that's what we like.
Absolutely.
On Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us, GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel. No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, a damning report has exposed the disturbing hold gender identity radicalism has taken in our schools, with teachers letting pupils change genders behind parents' backs, while teachers teach them that basic biology is a lie. Shocking proof of why we must do more to tackle the wave of violent trans extremism sweeping the globe.
We talk twerking in schools. I dropped a little tomato juice because I want her to be full of blood.
Don't miss my special digest on this next. Then my superstar panel give their view tonight. She's back. I'm excited about this. Alison Pearson alongside Sean Bailey and Nigel Nelson. Plus, as Labour's sole defender of women's rights, Rosie Duffield is again targeted by militant members of her own party for liking a tweet by fellow activist Graham Linehan. The legendary Father Ted creator joins me live to explain why Labour's war on women could cost them the next election. That unmissable exclusive interview coming up later in the show. Also on the way tonight, with Harry and Meghan's tax filings revealing they gave away less than a quarter of the £10 million raised by their Archwell Foundation. And this is the thing that I can't believe. They worked just 1 hour a week. 1 hour a week on charitable projects. What does this say about the true intention behind their so-called humanitarian charity? My royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and stateside royal expert Kinsey Schofield weigh in shortly. Future BBC guest host Nish Kumar has made his nasty politics crystal clear with this C-word tirade against the Prime Minister.
If you're a young Asian, you too can be Prime Minister.
So that foul-mouthed lefty comic has been given a prime-time slot hosting the BBC family quiz show Pointless, believe it or not. So does the British Bashing Corporation have double standards when it comes to political bias? Christopher Biggins, Narinder Kaur and David Campbell Bannerman do battle in the clash. As a new Tory civil war erupts, who is right on soaring taxes? Former PM Liz Truss or the Chancellor she appointed in desperation, Jeremy Hunt? Ex-Conservative Minister Anne Widdecombe analyses Big Witty style. And as a woman goes on US TV to claim she is Maddie McCann.
A DNA sample to Scotland Yard, for example. Are you willing to do that?
If DNA will show that my roots come from Britain, I will do this.
So in light of this dubious but potentially sensational development, should the police continue pumping money into the investigation? Well, Fleet Street icon Calvin McKenzie says absolutely not. He's going to give his unflinching verdict later. As ever, we'll have a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages hot off the press. A brand new Greatest Britain Union jackass named too. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. Great to have your company tonight. My digest on why gender extremism in schools is putting our children in danger in just one moment. But before that, the news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you, and good evening. The top story on GB News tonight. The mother of a 9-year-old girl who was shot in her own home in Liverpool last year says she's ecstatic her daughter's murderer is behind bars. Olivia Pratt-Corbell was killed last August when Thomas Cashman chased down a convicted drug dealer to her front door. Merseyside police released CCTV footage of the chase. Olivia was killed just moments later. The 34-year-old has been found guilty of her murder and of the attempted murder of Joseph Nee. Cheryl Corbell held up her daughter's pink teddy as she left the court. Well, in other news today, the King has made history by becoming the first British monarch to address the German Parliament, giving a speech in both German and English. King Charles made the invasion of Ukraine a focus of his speech, describing the war as unprovoked and later telling Ukrainian refugees that he was praying for them. He also condemned what he called the unimaginable suffering of innocent people. The Defence Secretary has addressed an alarming rise in sex offence cases within the military by saying things are changing. Ben Wallace says the rise is due to victims feeling more confident about coming forward. That comes as more than 300 Sexual Offences Act investigations were launched by the Royal Military Police last year. That's almost a 50% rise on the year before. Now, with the Easter holidays just around the corner, there could be travel disruption for many as security guards at London's Heathrow Airport plan to strike for 10 days. It's after last-ditch talks failed to resolve the dispute over pay, and over 1,400 Unite members will now walk out from tomorrow until Easter Sunday. The Duke of Sussex has left the High Court in London on the final day of the privacy hearing against the Daily Mail publisher as the trial came to an end. Harry and other celebrities, including Sir Elton John, have accused Associated newspapers of unlawfully gathering their private information. The publisher denies the allegations and says the legal challenges have been brought too late. Those, of course, preliminary hearings and not a trial. Now, a robotic shark can be spotted in London's Docklands right now. Don't worry, this shark only eats floating pollution like plastics and even algae. It's called the waste shark, and developers say it's designed to remove the equivalent of more than 22,000 plastic bottles every day. If you're watching on television, you can see it floating on the water. It's a drone on water, and we're told produces no carbon, no noise, no light pollution either as it travels. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. You're with GB News. Back now to Dan Wootton tonight.
So the gender extremism seeping into schools through a wave of woke tyranny is now putting child welfare in danger. That is the bombshell, but in my opinion, completely unsurprising finding of a damning report into gender ideology being taught in schools, often behind the backs of concerned parents with safeguarding rules that state that mum and dads should have a central role in any life-changing gender decisions, often thrown out the window. So the Policy Exchange, using Freedom of Information Act requests on 304 secondary schools, reveals that teachers are letting pupils change their names and uniforms without parental or professional consent via self-ID policies. Single-sex toilets and changing rooms are being abandoned, and the theory that gender identity is different to biological sex is being taught in most schools. Included in the report, lots of specifics, including diagrams of a gender-bred person, which tells youngsters that gender isn't binary and in many cases can be, quote, a bit of this and a dash of that. And there's also a guide for teachers showing that they must avoid terms like biologically male or biologically female because they are said to oversimplify a complex subject of what makes up someone's sex. So instead, you're not going to believe this, instead of male or female, they now want teachers and students to use a new acronym, AMAB or AFAB, which means assigned male at birth or assigned female at birth. Please make it stop, just make it stop. What are we doing to youngsters already confused, going through puberty? And how has this madness been allowed to enter our education system under a Conservative government? That's a disturbing mystery to me. But as usual, Rishi Sunak made all the right noises today.
Very concerned about these reports. You know, for me, the safety and well-being of our children is of paramount importance. And I've also been clear that parents must be able to know what is being taught to their kids in school, especially on these sensitive areas.
Absolutely, Prime Minister, absolutely. But now you must act. Protect our children. Stop them being unnecessarily sexualised by the very narrow and extreme trans lobby. I mean, look at the danger caused by the likes of the Tavistock Clinic that mutilated brave young women like Cara Bell, who were in need of a bit of mental support, not having puberty blockers forced upon them and their breasts removed. I've been passionate about bringing these issues to the fore since the launch of this show nearly 2 years ago, while giving a platform to the brave women standing up for their rights who have been cancelled by much of the MSM and the establishment in what amounts to a modern-day witch trial.
institutions that I have definitely lost faith in are educational institutions.
We talk twerking in schools.
Medicalising children definitely shouldn't be allowed, and it's disgraceful.
We are bringing up a generation of children that cannot spot the truth, that will not be able to say a woman is an adult human female, that will not understand the fundamental foundation of truth.
Those women must not be cancelled, they must be listened to. And so too must campaigners for boys who feel the war on men is becoming ingrained in our education system. Actually, not to mention gay folk who feel that much of this new ideology is extremely homophobic. Thanks to this sort of dangerous dogma, lots of young gay and lesbian children and teens are being convinced into believing they have been born into the wrong body, rather than dealing with their sexuality. Responsible sex education is necessary. Absolutely, I've always believed that. But this is actually becoming ideological indoctrination of our kids. But to respond now, my superstar panel, top Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. So, Sean Bailey, you say schools should actually be banned from teaching this sort of extreme gender ideology.
Look, this report by the Policy Exchange said, you know, we need to look at what our children have been taught and the government needs to issue guidance. No guidance. They need to get control, because the problem is the civil service has allowed outside organisations to effectively write this policy. So what the government need to do now is get ministers to write this policy, and internally in the civil service as well, there's certain campaign groups who are effectively civil servants. People need to give their angle on what it is personally, and then that needs to be removed and need to write something that's plain and simple. And the thing I'll say, if you're sat at home on the sofa now, how dare somebody do something to your children so fundamental without your knowledge, and then in the very same breath turn around and talk about you're legally responsible for their physical and mental health? It's an absolute outrage, and something needs to be done.
Alison Pearson, firstly, I'm so delighted to have you back in the studio. You were, of course, here on my very first show, so it's only been about 2 years between appearances, but I'm not going to take that personally.
Yeah,
but
you've settled in very well, if I may say so, Dan.
But look, it is an opportune time to have you on, because you've actually written a very powerful column about this for the Daily Telegraph tomorrow.
I'm absolutely outraged, Dan. As Sean says, what we are seeing is a lot of external providers coming into schools providing relationship and sex education, something called EDS, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion. Everyone is terrorised because everyone wants to be kind and inclusive. And kind and inclusive turns out to mean allowing young females to call Jessica to be called Jack in school, not to tell their parents, to get them acquiring breast binders and then to be on a pathway to having double mastectomies. That's not kind or inclusive. And I've heard from teachers who are scared to speak out that they will lose their jobs. And one young teacher at a London girls' school said to me at a parents' evening he had a list of the girls who were going by boys' names, if we're allowed to call them boys' names.
No, you're not, apparently, according to that document.
No, but, you know, what you and I and everyone here would think of as a boy's name, and it said the parent doesn't know that Jessica's called Jack, and you are not allowed to tell them. Now, as Sean said, that is outrageous. You would tell a parent if your child was being bullied, if the child had fallen over and hit their head, but you're not going to tell them, you're not going to tell the parent that the child's thinking of changing sex. It's absolutely
outrageous.
It's really outrageous, and it's got to stop. It has to stop.
Nigel Nelson, surely this has to be banned. Rishi Sunak says he wants to stop this. Just ban it. Ban it now.
No, I mean, you can't ban it, because obviously kids are going to ask an awful lot of questions about this. And I think that probably adults get more worked up about it than the kids do themselves. I haven't done this kind of research that Policy Exchange have done on this, but the youngsters I've talked to seem to be pretty relaxed about their schoolmates deciding to change gender. They don't seem to be hugely worried about it.
But the point is, a lot of them are changing gender unnecessarily, and by the way, we're going to see an explosion of this. This is the tip of the iceberg at the moment. We're going to see an explosion of especially young women who take these puberty blockers and do all of the things that Alison's talking about, actually detransition in their 20s. This is coming, you know, there is a medical crisis coming.
But that's further down the road, isn't it? We're talking about what is happening in schools at the moment.
From this ideology, though.
And it does seem to me that that what schools must do is put the well-being of children first.
Absolutely.
So quite clearly that there may be occasions when a child wants to confide in a teacher confidentially without parents knowing. I would imagine that most times parents know anyway. It would seem to be odd to me that if parents don't know what is going on.
Here's the thing, what Nigel's saying is correct. A child should be able to confide in a teacher, but a teacher knows if a child is being abused, for instance, the teacher knows the parents are going to be asked to be involved. So why not in this case? And the real thing you have here is the fear of teachers. Many teachers just click to the guidance because they do not want to be singled out as racist or homophobic or anti-trans. But what we really must do...
The poor teachers who do challenge the woke orthodoxy.
If you want to defend the welfare of children, you have to be more respectful of their parents and their community view, because that's where they go back to every single day.
But there isn't any guidance. This is what the teacher unions have been complaining about for years. There is no proper guidance, at least today, because of this. Rishi Sunak has promised guidance by the summer term.
Talking about gender-bred people and saying that gender is just a little dash of that is actually deeply irresponsible, because the thing is, Alison, you know, I feel this deeply because as a gay man, I am very concerned that as a child at school, I would have been pushed down a different path. And I speak to lesbian friends about this, I speak to gay friends about this. Your hormones are running wild. As a child and as a teenager, you go through little moments thinking, well, actually, I'm attracted to the same sex. Maybe that means... And these teachers are embracing that rather than just letting teenagers do what teenagers have always done, which is experiment themselves and work it out.
Well, that's what Hannah Barnes has written a very good book about, the Tavistock Gender Identity Service. And what they found was there's been... it's not, Nigel, that kids are relaxed about this now. There has been an explosion in teenage girls specifically suddenly deciding that, look, teenage girls, I was a teenage girl, you dislike your body, you wish for something else. What you don't need is someone saying you're probably trans. No, you could well be gay, and you're right, Dan, because what's happening now is there is homophobic attitudes. So young, potentially either gay, potentially gay boys and girls, or they'll just, you know...
Or just people who are exploring for a brief
figure it out.
moment.
So now what you're having is you're having trans people saying, oh, that person, she wears Doc Martens and dungarees. Feminism was all about that you could be a girly girl, you could be Kylie Minogue, or you could be someone in dungarees.
And likewise, the young boys who prefer ballet to football.
Yes, but you're not trans because you're that kind of person. So it's extremely limiting, and also it's a very, very aggressive minority proselytising this orthodoxy in schools and cutting parents. And the reason that I've heard that some left-wing councils say we've got obstacles and barriers to implementing this. The obstacles and barriers are called mums and dads.
Absolutely. Final word, Sean.
If you're a teacher watching this now, ask yourself, is there any other circumstance where you deny the knowledge to a parent? Ask yourself, is your school defending young people's welfare by pushing this policy? And you, as a teacher, have to come to an answer yourself.
Very powerful message. Sean Bailey, Alison Pearson, Nigel Nelson, my superstar panel, and they're with me all night. But also on the way, with Harry and Meghan's tax filings revealing they gave away less than a quarter of the $10 million they raised and only worked an hour a week. How committed are they really to charitable causes? I think I know the answer to that by my royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Kinsey Schofield, will weigh in shortly. But next, in the clash with future BBC presenter Nish Kumar calling the Prime Minister an Asian C-word and a jaw-dropping attack, does the British Bashing Corporation have double standards on political bias? Christopher Biggins, Narinder Kaur and David Campbell Bannerman do battle live in the studio straight after the break. Of course, your view on this, most important to me, dan@gbnews.uk is my email. Vote in our poll at GB News. The results and the clash straight after the break.
I I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel. Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion, 5 times the debate, and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end. I can't Britain's wink. Listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Lady Colin Campbell and Anne Widdecombe on the way, but it's time now for The Clash. And lefty comedian Nish Kumar, an upcoming guest host on the BBC's family quiz show Pointless, has made his feelings crystal clear about a Conservative Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and quite frankly, they're shocking. He actually describes our Prime Minister multiple times as an Asian C-word. Now, the corporation seems content to let Kumar carry on that vein, and who should be surprised, given that their former political presenting supremo, the left-wing wolf Andrew Marr, has finally thrown off his sheep's clothing by revealing that he wants there to be a Labour government. So, from the Knickers' crass Nazi jibe to now calling the Prime Minister the C-word, does the BBC have double standards on political bias? Let me know your thoughts by emailing dan@gbnews.uk. You can vote in our poll at GB News on Twitter. The results shortly, but I've got a fabulous lineup in the studio tonight. Entertainment legend, of course, a familiar face on the BBC for many years, Christopher Biggins, the broadcaster Narinder Kaur, and the former Conservative MEP David Campbell Bannerman. So, Biggins, look, let me just get this straight for a moment. Nish Kumar, who I don't find personally funny, but he claims he's a comedian, right?
Yeah.
He has just been given a job to be the guest presenter of Pointless, which is the BBC's main family game show. Can you tell me if there was any other right-wing or non-left-wing comedian or white comedian who were to describe the Prime Minister as an Asian C-word that would ever work at the BBC again?
No. Would never happen. But the trouble is the BBC now have two standings. They say you can't do this, and they do it. And that is the problem with the BBC. You can't have people going around calling the Prime Minister the C word. Forget what nationality is. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Shall we take a listen to what he said?
Oh, my goodness, yes.
Listen to this. It's bleeped, don't worry.
No, it's bleeped.
I assumed that if an Asian man became Prime Minister, he'd be nice. No. And I know that we're in Leicester, a city with a large Asian community, and statistically a lot of you must be and I want you to know, if you're a young Asian, you too can be Prime Minister.
Narinder Kaur, as an Asian woman, do you find that acceptable? I can't believe that you are defending Kumar here.
I don't think the C word's acceptable at all. I think it's actually an awful word. It's abhorrent. However, this isn't about politics here. This is about a brown person judging a brown person, a South Asian saying, actually, we are so happy that there is an Asian Prime Minister. We've got a brown face up there. We've dreamt about this all this time. But actually, he's a huge letdown. And we do... Look, we will hold a brown Prime Minister to a higher standard because we're Asian.
But Narinder,
I don't think the BBC's got anything to do with it.
There's freedom of speech. If Nish Kumar wants to be a vile, horrible, racist man, he can do so.
That is not being racist.
My issue is that the BBC is giving him a prime-time role when they're trying to say that they're impartial,
This is his private podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can't have it both ways. Either he's a comedian or he's a presenter.
Exactly.
And, you know, he's mixing it up here, as he often does. I think it's very insulting. It's very bad language to be used about any Prime Minister, you know, and to use it in this context is wrong. And also, you know, he is BBC, so you got the news quiz.
Actually, this is his private podcast.
And
this is as an Asian man to an Asian man saying, actually, I'm judging you as a brown man to a brown man. This is not BBC.
But he's bringing race into it, because, and what makes me furious about that is you just know that if a white comedian or a black comedian was to describe Rishi Sunak as an Asian C-word, they would be finished. They would never work again.
Absolutely. Obviously, because a white person
can't say... Let Biggin speak and then you can respond to it.
Shut up. There would be their career would be over. You're absolutely right. And it's, you know, it's the double standing I can't stand.
Yeah.
You know, and that is what is wrong. And the BBC need to look to this because they're supposed not to be political.
Yeah.
I mean, if Keir Starmer was called the C-word, would you be thrilled by that? No.
No, I think the word's horrible, but he said Asian. Let's put the Asian. You're taking the Asian out of it. And you also, we couldn't say that. Of course you couldn't say that. Why would you say Asian C-word? You're not allowed to say that.
Why would you say the C-word?
Because that would make you racist.
No, let me give you another circumstance then. What if a high-profile black Conservative politician, let's say James Cleverly, was to describe David Lammy as a black C-word? He would be cancelled immediately.
Completely cancelled, but this is brown
it's the
to
same
brown.
situation.
It's not. It's like a black person calling a black person. They can. So a brown person can call a brown person. And he didn't say anything derogatory. The C-word was actually vile, but he said Asian. And he's judging it on because we hold Asian people to a higher standard. He's disappointed.
But David, just imagine for 1 second the outcry that there would be if the brilliant Conservative comedian, Jim Davidson, who was actually here last night, were to be hired to be a guest host on Pointless. I mean, by the way, Pointless would get its best ratings in years and it would be absolutely hilarious if Jim was there. But the BBC would never do it. So that is proof of double standards.
I think the other thing is Kumar is the news quiz, you know, Radio 4. Now, you know, that involves actually sort of looking at news in an impartial way, isn't it not? I mean, impartiality. Seems to be like a Lineker 2, this, to me. And, you know, the BBC has to decide what it's going to do. I mean, you know, I don't think we got clear guidance from Lineker. I don't think he's really sort of taken the mickey, Lineker.
Well, that's
and
what's
we're back
happened now.
in the
But do you
same
not
position.
think the BBC,
Everyone is taking
it's
the piss.
public funded so they can take more risks? When it's commercial, they can't take those kind of risks. I think BBC can take those kind of risks. They can be a little bit political when they want to be. Why not?
I do think that's
We're paying for it, Narendra. Do you not understand
But
that?
they're not one way or the other.
We don't
Licence
pay
fee.
our licence fee to be constantly fed left-wing propaganda.
But you'd be
and I'm
happy
sorry,
if it was
I am
right-wing.
not happy. Yeah, well, no, I would not be happy if it was right-wing, but it's not right-wing. That's the point, and it's never right-wing.
And also, they shouldn't be political.
He's a
On a
comedian.
level.
He's a comedian. Like Jeremy Clarkson, and they said he can say what he likes, it's comedy. Why can't Nish?
No, but nowadays...
Why can't Nish? Why can Jeremy and Nish can't?
I would hate to be a comedian now, because a comedian can't say anything. You have to think about... You see, he obviously didn't
As John
think...
Cleese says, as John Cleese often
Yes,
says, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, but
well,
he
when I
obviously
interviewed
didn't
John
think...
Cleese the other day, it was fascinating. He said he will not even offer up the new series of Fawlty Towers to the BBC because he knows that it would be woke wash.
Yeah.
That's what I call everything they do. But what I find hilarious, Narendra, is they woke wash everything, but when it's one of their favourite comedians, their favourite lefty comedians, he's allowed to call the Prime Minister an Asian C-word. I just cannot believe that you can defend that.
I can defend it because it's brown on brown.
No,
and
no,
judging
no,
on
you're
Indian
not
to
saying
Indian.
right. Why
It's allowed.
why
it's
is this
allowed.
to do
It's not
with-
political.
it's not to
It's
do-
not political. It's
no.
about Asian. He's a brown person. We're going to judge the brown.
It shouldn't be anything to do with race. This is about bad language and
it is about bad language.
You know, impartiality or not. You know, lack of.
But I don't think he's doing. I don't think he's being political here. He's genuinely being. This is about an Indian judging an Indian.
Oh, I think he is being very political.
Narendra, I just want to put something to you. Is it
Always forget
true?
me now.
Is it true?
You're
is
in
it
trouble.
true that you said that while you wouldn't use the C word, you would actually use another C word to describe Rishi Sunak?
I would have
and
said
Suella Braverman?
I would have said he's a bit of a coconut.
Explain what that means.
So
'cause I
that
think
means
that's hugely racist.
I get called. It's not racist. If a brown people would call me that sometimes.
Explain what it means.
So what it means is you are brown on the outside, white on the inside, like a bounty. Yeah, it's like the Bounty chocolate bar. So I often get called that by other Indian people, and I don't mind that.
You're prepared, but you're going to call Rishi Sunak that?
Oh, Rishi Sunak is a coconut.
Okay, well, I'm going to put.
And so
I'm going to
That's
say to you
racist.
immediately, Narendra, that is hugely racist because what you are saying.
It is
Narendra,
racist. It's not
well, let me
racist.
explain why. Because what you're saying is that an Asian Prime Minister cannot be rich, cannot be on the right, cannot be highly successful.
He can be all of
and
that.
I think that is
he can be all
so
of that.
wrong.
Most Asians are very successful. Look, we've got in Scotland, we've got...
Well, why are you saying he's not a real
because
Asian?
he's not looking after brown people. And I know you're going to say, actually, why should he? It matters.
Biggins, could you believe this? That's racism, isn't it?
I
That's not
couldn't agree
racism.
more. I love you lots, but I mean, what you're saying is rubbish. I cannot believe it. And this whole business of a brown person can say about a brown person
Well, you
that they're a
can.
C-word or a coconut. I mean, I think it's
Coconut,
ridiculous.
not C-word, coconut.
David, how do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's a racist term, and I don't like it. And if you and I said it, we'd been serious. Oh,
my
I mean, let's be honest.
But you can't. A white person can't say it to a brown person.
Are you not worried that you're creating a society of total double standards?
I don't think it's double standards because this is a brown person can say it to a brown person. There's nothing wrong with that. A white
leave
person
race
can't
out of
say
it.
You're not thinking about white people
But it's
listening
not.
to this.
It's about Indian people not. They're being gatekeepers. Suella and Rishi Sunak, they're gatekeepers. They didn't do anything for Indian people. They didn't show that Indian. And their thoughts on immigration
Do you know what?
are not very
I think
Indian.
that is an absolutely disgusting thing to say because what Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman have done is show it to any young Asian person in this country, you can reach the top.
They have done that. I agree.
And you know
on
what?
merit.
I agree.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely. On merit. Not because race. And you know what? Suella in particular would absolutely hate to be judged on her race. And I think the fact that
We
you're
are
throwing
gonna
around that
judge her.
term,
We are
that
gonna
you're
judge
throwing
her.
around that term about her is racist. I think what Nish Kumar said is racist. And the problem is, Narendra, you are very quick to call white people racist all the time, and it doesn't go one way. That's all I'm going to say. It doesn't go one way.
I think a brown person can say that word.
Okay.
And I
well,
think,
you've made your point. You've made your point.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
Narendra Kerr, Christopher Biggins, David Campbell-Bannerman, thank you so much. But what do you think about this? As Future Pointless presenter Nish Kumar calls Rishi Sunak the C word, does the BBC have double standards on political bias? Well, Monique on Twitter writes, yes, Lineker Kumar, the list goes on. They give only left-wing figures a platform, knowing full well that they'll use it to voice their own views and messages, which is exactly what the Beeb wants. Andrew on the email writes, of course the BBC is biased, almost to the point of being unwatchable. I mean, I agree with that. It's scandalous that I have to pay a fee, basically to finance the BBC to watch live TV on other channels. This ridiculous arrangement must end. And from Donny, the once great BBC has been hijacked by agenda-driven monsters employing only those who share their woke and liberal views. And your verdict is now in. It's overwhelming. 93% of you agree that the BBC does have double standards on political fight. Biggins is very happy about that, Narinda. Only 7% of our audience with you tonight, Narinda.
They're all proud, no doubt.
Coming up, as a new Tory civil war erupts, who is right on soaring taxes, high tax Chairman Hunt, or should we trust Liz and her positive plan for growth? Ex-Conservative Minister Anne Widdecombe analyses soon, big witty style. But next, with Harry and Meghan's tax filings revealing they gave away less than a quarter of the £10 million raised by their Archwell Foundation and only worked an hour a week. Are they really committed to charity? I don't think so, but my royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Kinsey Schofield, weigh in straight after the break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, between Harry's vile memoirs, Meghan's dull podcasts, and both looking to destroy their respective families, you wonder how much time they have to fit in all of their philanthropy, right? Well, according to a newly released tax filing from the Archewell Foundation, the couple's charity work has actually been put on the back burner. Shock, horror, surprise, surprise, not. Despite raising £13 million from two wealthy benefactors, just £3 million has been dished out in grants. And while Harry and Meghan don't take a salary, they admitted to working just 1 hour a week each at the foundation. That means just 52 hours a year. Well, I'm delighted now to be joined by our royal masterminds, a new look duo tonight, Lady Colin Campbell and Kinsey Schofield. So, Lady C, what happened to the Sussex's mission to save the world?
Well, it's disappeared down the tubes, $1 bill at a time. You know, the fact of the matter is, they have one employee at the charity. His name is James Holt. He earns half of one of Meghan's evening dresses, so that shows how important he is. And if you look at the tax return, it's very interesting because in America, you are forbidden to have political activism as a part of a charity. It's not a foundation, it's a charity. And its mission statement is very clearly political activism. How this has actually passed so far is beyond me, but I have received tens of thousands of complaints about it. And people have said they are going to be informing and complaining to the IRS, and I would not discourage them from doing so. You know, the whole thing is a joke. It's not only a joke, it's a sick joke.
Kinsey Schofield, how on earth can Harry and Meghan claim to care so much about humanitarian work and then admit that they only work 1 hour a week for charity? It's pathetic, isn't it?
Well, Dan, Lady C, I know I don't have to remind you of this quote. Remember their life of service, that catty quote when they were leaving, when Megxit happened, they wanted to make sure that the royal family knew that they did not have to be members of the royal family to live a life of service. That's not an hour a week. I mean, Elizabeth Holmes worked harder for Theranos, and that company was a fraud. So I think Lady C is absolutely right. There's something very salacious about this, and I just think it proves what hypocrites they are.
It really does. Now, of course, speaking of hypocrisy, Harry's international privacy tour touched down again in London this week. And Lady C, he seems to want to ruin freedom of the press in the UK. That's what I take from this anyway. But what did you make of the fact that he decided to turn up unnecessarily at this pre-trial hearing?
Well, I mean, the whole thing's a joke. You know, anybody who knows anything about the law knows that no litigant actually turns up for an application. I mean, your lawyers turn up. You don't. The whole thing has been a gratuitous publicity-seeking, attention-seeking grab for headlines. And you notice he was so overjoyed that he forgot to be unhappy and looked as if he was happy, happy, happy. Oh my gosh, there are all of the cameras. Oh, I'm in heaven. Oh, I'm supposed to really hate them, but I can't resist loving them. You know, the whole thing the man is so hypocritical. But also remember the timing of this. He has timed this for when he thought the king and queen were going to be in France. And he was therefore going to try to edge them out of the picture so that he could, and Meghan could yet again, because even though she's not here, you can depend on it that she's behind this as well, that they could yet again try to edge everybody else out of the picture. I mean, the whole thing is just sick and sad and pathetic.
Yeah, I thought that was completely disgraceful, actually, Kinsey. The day he shows up, as Lady C says, that was meant to be the start of Charles and Camilla's big tour in France. Obviously, it ended up being cancelled because of the protest action going on in France at the moment. But the thing is, Kinsey, What this shows to me is just how deeply unhappy Harry is. The fact that he gets off so much on returning to the UK, not to see his friends, not to see his family, but to wage an invisible war with the media.
Well, and I also think he's trying to redirect the narrative from narc to white knight. He needs this victimhood narrative. People were starting to look at him a little funny, and so he's back as a victim again. I guarantee you, if they show up for coronation, we'll have a whole row about another uniform. I bet you we can find him a pacifier. If he can't wear a uniform, surely we can get a binky in his mouth. But I just think that you're absolutely right. It's all about being a victim, and he thinks that there is currency in this, and unfortunately, in the United States, there is. However, people are getting pretty sick of it.
Yeah, I think people are getting very sick of it. Lady C, let's move on to that state visit. Things seem to have gone incredibly well, actually, for King Charles and Camilla in Germany. This visit is getting a lot of attention. I think the Republicans out there and the Harry and Meghan lovers who hope that after the death of Queen Elizabeth II, the interest in the British royal family would start to wane. I think they're going to be disappointed, Lady C.
Oh, I think they will be very disappointed. I mean, the King's visit has gone down so well. I mean, it's been wonderfully received. He spoke in German, he speaks German. His father, his mother, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, his grandmother, who hated Germans, she spoke German as well. She actually had a Jewish governess, a German Jewish governess, when she was a little girl, who at the beginning of the First World War had to go back to Germany. So they all speak German. And, you know, he has touched all the right notes, and the visit has gone down brilliantly, which I am delighted. I'm actually not surprised that it has. And Camilla has charmed everybody she has met as well.
Kinsey, to me, I think it shows the contrast, doesn't it, between King and Prince, because you've got King Charles on a tour of duty and you have Prince Harry on a tour of vengeance.
That's right. You're seeing that life of service in action, you know, almost a 2-minute standing ovation for his speech. I am so excited for the coronation, Dan. It gave me goosebumps watching because I just thought such an exciting time to come.
Are you coming back, Kinsey? Are you going to be here?
I'm going to be there.
Yes. OK, brilliant. Well, I'm going to get to see you in the flesh again. That's very, very exciting news. No, I agree. I think it's been a big hit. Big hit. Lady C, what's your dog's name?
Her name is Aurora.
Oh, she's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
She's a puppy. She's a puppy, so I can't tell her no.
No, you can't. You can't. Well, look, very delighted to have Aurora alongside Lady Colin Campbell and Kinsey Schofield, my Royal Masterminds this week. Thank you both so much. We'll speak very soon. But coming up on what the government has dubbed Green Day, is it wrong to punish households just for using gas as we continue this deranged march to net zero? That's my big debate soon as my superstar panel return. But first, as a new Tory civil war erupts, who is right on soaring taxes, high tax hunt, or should we trust Liz and her positive plan for growth? Well, ex-Conservative Minister Anne Widdecombe is going to analyse this next in Big Witty style.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different.
It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time for Big Witty Style now, and a fresh Tory civil war seems to have erupted after Chancellor Jeremy Hunt took a swipe at his former boss Liz Truss for her mini-budget last year. Watch this.
I think it's been more coherent than you might think, with one exception. Yes, there were some mistakes in the mini-budget which we had to reverse, and in particular, I think it's clear you can't fund tax cuts through increased borrowing. So that is a clear thing that we changed course on.
Now, understandably, Truss hit back with a spokesperson for the former PM saying Liz was always clear that you can't deliver economic growth and thus reduce borrowing by hiking taxes. Raising corporation tax from 19% to 25% looks like a pretty bad mistake right now when you consider how a firm like AstraZeneca is locating its new plant in Ireland, where corporation tax is half the rate now being levied by the British government. The Treasury looks like it will lose revenue as a result of that decision. And Truss is not alone in her concern, with fellow Tory backbenchers, but big names like Priti Patel, John Redwood and Boris Johnson himself, all seeming to slam aspects of Chairman Hunt's budget. Well, Anne Widdecombe, the former Conservative Party minister, joins me now. So, Anne, you know I'm Team Truss all the way on this. Where do you stand?
Oh, I'm definitely Team Truss in principle. I think in practice she mishandled it. She herself acknowledged she tried to do far too much, far too soon. But she was certainly on the right track. She's absolutely right about corporation tax. You've got the proof in AstraZeneca, and you're going to have more proof because firms won't come here. Why should they come here? Why should big, successful companies come here and pay higher tax than they would pay if they could go somewhere else? The whole idea of being competitive, getting out of the EU, was that we were going to be competitive. We won't be so long as we keep taxes high. Now, the other thing is, the very raison d'etre of the Conservative Party is to be a low-tax, low-spend party. It has abandoned that completely. Now, I understand that during COVID, it had to spend money that it wasn't expecting to spend. I understand that. But in general, you keep control of spending and you keep taxes low if you're a Conservative government. I mean, as I've said before, we don't have a Conservative party at Westminster. We've got a red party and we got a pale pink party.
Yeah, and I think it is so depressing to see so many Tories who didn't go into politics to be pale pink coalesce around Hunt. I don't get it. You know, no one wanted Hunt, Anne. Like, he completely flopped in the leadership election last year. I don't understand why everyone's just accepted, oh, this is the bloke who should be Chancellor and he's got to raise our taxes and increase spending. It's bonkers to me.
I think what we're looking at is Remainers' revenge, basically. Liz Truss was bringing a really competitive Brexit approach to the economy, and the Remainers were terrified that it might succeed. Now, as I say, she did mishandle it, and it wasn't going to succeed in the short term. But I think that they were terrified that it might succeed in the medium to long term, and indeed, even the IMF said that we would have the highest growth in the G7 if we'd gone ahead with that. And growth is the only way you can control inflation and have a healthy economy and lower taxes. You need growth.
Yeah, and they didn't let her succeed, Anne. They didn't let her succeed because she was challenging too much of the economic orthodoxy. And look, absolutely, maybe there are a couple of things in that mini budget that she shouldn't have done immediately, and maybe there are a couple of things that should have gone through the proper Office of Budget Responsibility process. Like, fine, but for the Conservative Party now and for its Chancellor to defend such a hike in corporation tax, which goes completely against what the rest of the world is doing, I honestly believe if they continue with this approach before the next election, they will be finished off. Because what is the point in voting for a Conservative Party that is going to increase your taxes?
Well, exactly. And I mean, we're talking about the big corporations, but just look at the ordinary individual. You know, with thresholds kept as they are, that means they're effectively paying more tax. Now, you know, it's a very bad time indeed to have the level of state confiscation in your pay packet rise. And people are struggling and families are hard pressed. And it isn't just the very poor. It goes way beyond that. People are struggling because of what is going on globally at the moment. So I think, you know, I'm totally with what Truss was trying to do. I do think she mishandled it. And the first thing you do if you're going to do something highly controversial is not just do it. You need to bring people with you. You need to talk to the Office of Budget Responsibility. You need to prepare the markets. You need.
I do agree with all of that, but the thing is, Anne, I don't think they would have allowed her to succeed, even if she had done that. Final point I want to make on this, Anne. I'm interested in your view, but you've got most of the media now, the establishment media, and most of the Tory party basically saying to Liz Truss, "Oh, sit down and shut up. You know, we don't want to hear from you." I'm totally the opposite of that. I actually think Liz Truss has a really important voice, and I think it was great that she spoke out against Jeremy Hunt. Where do you stand?
Well, the party in the country voted for Liz Truss on exactly the principles and the ticket that she was trying to implement. They actually voted for lower taxes. They voted for her for that reason. And I think that is why so many MPs are against her, because, of course, the MPs didn't. They voted for slippery Rishi.
Indeed. Indeed, former Tory Minister Anne Widdecombe, thank you so much, Anne. We will speak next week. But coming up, Labour's sole defender of women's rights, Rosie Duffield, has been denounced by members of her own party again just for liking a tweet by the fellow activist Graham Linehan. Well, the legendary Father Ted creator joins me live shortly to explain why it's time to stand up to this extreme trans lobby. But next, on what the government has dubbed Green Day, is the deranged march to net zero pushing us to punish households just for using gas? That's my big debate very soon with my superstar panel. Plus, we're going to have a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages hot off the press. We're back in just 2 minutes' time.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, on what the government has dubbed Green Day, Energy Secretary Grant Shapps is in lockstep with those American idiots, see what I did there, on the deranged march to net zero.
The trouble is, all people hear is, my bills are going to go up. Will they?
There are a bunch of levy charges, essentially.
Just say yes, Shapps. So is it really fair to punish households for using gas? And should the UK be banning new diesel and petrol cars from 2030 when our European neighbours have dropped the measure? It's a big net zero debate with my superstar panel next. And tonight, I'm joined by Alison Pearson, Sean Bailey and Nigel Nelson. As Labour's sole defender of women's rights, Rosie Duffield is once again denounced by members of her own party for liking a tweet by fellow activist Graham Linehan. The legendary Father Ted creator joins me live to explain why himself, Rosie, J.K. Rowling and other brave celebrities refused to be silenced by the extreme trans lobby. Don't miss that exclusive interview. On the week that the King snubbed a meeting with his treacherous son Harry, a bombshell GB News People's poll has revealed that just 8% of the great British public want the Sussexes to return. So should the royal family take note and ditch any attempts at reconciliation? That's coming up in the media buzz. As the Home Office continues to pump money into the search for Madeleine McCann, are we just encouraging possible phonies like this Polish woman to come out the woodwork?
A DNA sample to Scotland Yard, for example. Are you willing to do that?
If DNA will show that my roots come from Britain, I will do this.
Fleet Street legend Calvin Mackenzie is adamant that police should close the case. He's uncancelled to explain why later this hour. Plus, it's a new First Minister, same old division in Scotland.
We will continue to advocate and to advance independence because we need it now more than ever before.
I'm going to bring you more of a shambolic FMQ's debut from Whom's a Useless, which had no less than 5 stoppages due to eco-cretins in the gallery. And finally, emboldened by Lefty Lineker, this BBC guest host aimed a vicious tirade at the Prime Minister.
If you're a young Asian, you too can be Prime Minister.
But the comically challenged Nish Kumar faces stiff competition when I crown tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. We'll have a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages hot off the press in mere moments too, right after Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you and good evening to you. Our top story tonight on GB News, the mother of a 9-year-old girl who was shot in her own home in Liverpool last year says she's ecstatic her daughter's murderer is behind bars. Olivia Pratt-Corbell was killed last August when Thomas Cashman chased down a convicted drug dealer to her front door. Merseyside police released CCTV footage of the chase. Olivia was killed shortly after these moments you can see if you're watching on television. Well, the 34-year-old has been found guilty of her murder and of the attempted murder of Joseph Nee. Cheryl Corbell held up her daughter's pink teddy as she left court. Now, in other news today, the King has made history by becoming the first British monarch to address the German Parliament, giving a speech in both German and English. King Charles made the invasion of Ukraine a focus of his speech, describing the war as unprovoked, later telling Ukrainian refugees that he was praying for them. He also condemned what he called the unimaginable suffering of innocent people. The Defence Secretary has addressed an alarming rise in sex offence cases within the military by saying that things are changing. Ben Wallace says the rise is due to victims feeling more confident about coming forward. It comes as more than 300 Sexual Offences Act investigations were launched by the Royal Military Police last year. That's almost a 50% rise on the year before. The White House has tonight issued a statement saying US citizens residing in or travelling to Russia should depart immediately. It comes as an American reporter working for the Wall Street Journal has been arrested in Russia on suspicion of spying for Washington. Evan Gershkovich pleaded not guilty during his court appearance, according to the state-owned media. But the court ruled Gershkovich could be held in custody until the end of May. Now, here, with the Easter holidays around the corner, there could be travel disruption for many as security guards at London's Heathrow Airport plan to go on strike for 10 days. That's after last-ditch talks failed to resolve their dispute over pay. Over 1,400 Unite members will walk out from tomorrow until Easter Sunday. Now, have you ever wondered what one of the biggest creatures ever to walk the earth may have looked like? Well, soon you'll be able to. A replica skeleton of the Patagotitan majorum will go on display at the Natural History Museum from tomorrow. The giant that weighed in at a whopping 57 tonnes belongs to the group known as the Titanosaurs and was discovered nearly 10 years ago in South America. It's the most complete, gigantic dinosaur ever discovered. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. You're with GB News. Part 2 now of Dan Wootton Tonight.
Tomorrow's News Tonight now in our media buzz. So let's kick off with the very first look at the front pages, hot off the press. And the Eye leads with proposals to raise the state pension age to 70 for those born after 1979, with an official review on pension policy suggesting it will be essential to stay within spending guidelines. The Guardian leads with a wave of cost of living bill increases and tax rises coming in April, which will leave families almost £700 a year worse off. And the Daily Star leads with the revelation that the feared psycho killer AI chatbots that are reportedly predicted to take over the world have been befuddled by Wordle. So maybe, just maybe, we have a chance yet. My superstar panel back with me now, top Daily Telegraph columnist and author Alison Pearson, the former Conservative Labour mayoral candidate Shaun Bailey, and GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Now, the government celebrated its so-called Green Day by unveiling a raft of net zero policies they claim will make Britain a climate-friendly utopia. Their spinning is to be admired, but the truth is that this crazed obsession with eliminating carbon by 2050 is self-sabotage at its worst. One of the most outrageous ideas tabled is a plan to penalise household gas bills with green levies of more than £100 if people don't install expensive heat pumps and ditch gas boilers. But when the government is already splurging millions on handouts to skint Brits who currently can't afford their energy bills, this is nothing short of insanity. So watch the Energy Secretary Grant Shapps get into a real tiz, to say the least, when confronted about the bill hike on GME this morning.
The trouble is, all people hear is, my bills are going to go up. Will they?
No. And in fact, actually, that £100 shift would be from gas to giving the money off electricity instead.
Can we just establish that? Sorry, Mr. Shapps. So, yes, you're saying that gas bills will not go up.
So one of the proposals, it's not, which we said we will consult on today, is moving. There are a bunch of levy charges, essentially. And this is quite a minor point of the overall plan, by the way.
Shap showing there how to say a lot without actually revealing the truth. But proving he's well and truly down the green extremism rabbit hole, he also arrogantly said the UK will plough on with banning new petrol and diesel cars by 2030, despite Europe backtracking on the pledge after realising its mistake, the EU, that is. So should we continue this net zero race to the bottom, Alison Pearson, when we know it's the poorest in society who are going to feel this the most?
They'll have to prize my gas boiler from my cold.
Me too.
But we will be cold and dead, Dan. We will be cold and dead because that's what net zero is going to do. I cannot believe Theresa May's government enshrined the net zero by 2050 in law. One of the most crazy things. I mean, they've done a lot of crazy things, but in recent times. How is it going to work? We don't have the infrastructure. 50% of the British people live in terraced houses, flats, maisonettes. They don't have charging points for all these electric cars. Seriously, in whatever it is, 6 years and 9 months, apparently, there are not going to be any more petrol and diesel cars. That simply cannot be true. We absolutely...
Which even the EU has now acknowledged.
The EU has now acknowledged, has watered down the proposals under pressure from the German car industry. I think it's an absolutely kamikaze policy, and it's as if the 67 million British people are being told to jump out of a plane. We haven't got parachutes yet, but we'll be thinking about what parachutes we'll have before we touch the ground.
These heat pumps, by the way, because you're talking about
Hugely
older homes, hugely expensive, don't really work.
No.
So don't properly heat your home, don't properly heat up your bath water, things like that. So I'm very opposed to these heat pumps, but also a lot of houses, it's going to be very difficult to even get them installed.
Well, we can see that people don't want them because people are very rational and they realise that they're a bad idea. There's
paying a lot of money to get a worse product.
There's a boiler bonus policy or something, and they're going to give you a £5,000 grant. Hardly anyone has bothered to take that up, and that's because people absolutely in their guts know it's wrong and it's bad, and it's just, it's absolute. I just cannot tell you, Dan, I think it's lunacy, and we're already 400 billion quid down on some of the lockdown madness, and now they want to plunge us into the same kind of madness based on other, mad modelling as well.
Should the target be abandoned?
I think the target, I've talked to people about this who know a lot about it, and they're talking about pushing it back another 50 years from 2050. It's just not, plausible at the moment to achieve it. And also, it's going to make people poorer, miserable. Green policies are quite popular with the public at the moment. That's because they don't know they're not going to be allowed to go on holiday, they're going to be colder, they're going to be poorer. Isn't that right, Sean?
Well, challenge... How do you feel about your party going down this path? Because surely it would be much more electorally successful to leave this green, mad extremism to the Labour Party. It could even be election winning.
I think you need to put these things in perspective. As nations of the world, we are the leading nation around green proposals, so I don't think we need to speed up. We've already won that race. And there's a few questions that people need to answer. We didn't choose our gas boilers, we inherited them, they were given to us. So now to punish us because we had gas where we had no choice, I think is going to be very unpopular and quite unsustainable. And this whole thing about cars, people have to remember only 13% of the British public use public transport. The rest have to drive around, and EVs are hugely expensive. There is no infrastructure to charge them, and as this policy moves forward, it's going to make second-hand petrol and diesel cars absolutely
in 7
expensive.
years. Nigel, look, I know you're fully signed up to this whole net zero by 2050 thing, aren't you? You think it's
I was
great.
a sceptic at one point.
But now you're not.
No, I'm not. No, I think this is actually a target that's worth
but on
trying to
petrol
meet.
and diesel cars, even you must be able to concede. In 7 years' time, this is lunacy.
It's around the corner.
Well, what I do think is that more needs to be done. And the whole point about all this is you've got to start from the premise whether or not you believe that in climate change, if you do, that global warming does have to be kept at 1.5 degrees. If you agree with that...
You're looking at it from a macro level, right?
Well, that was very macro.
Yeah, exactly. Then we've already done all we need to do, actually.
Yeah,
we're down
less
to
than
less than 1% 1%
less
of emissions.
than 1% of global emissions.
And we've done more than any other Western
we're the fifth biggest economy in the world, and we're less than 1% of global emissions. And look, nobody's saying don't do this green stuff, but just tell us where the money's going to come from.
Well, it'll come from all of us. I mean, government's got to do more, and we've got to pay more. I mean, it will actually cost us, and you're absolutely right, it won't be popular to do. The question really is whether you think it's actually worth doing.
Well, I don't.
I tell you when it's worth doing,
then
Dan.
what's the alternative?
I tell you when it's worth doing. If Grant Shapps talked about an electric future, an electric economy, that makes sense if it can actually power the country, which means we need to build nuclear power stations today, and because then we would be free of the world, whatever nonsense goes on in the world in the future.
And by the way, no one, or very few people are questioning lots of the developments that have come naturally as a result of technology over the past 3 decades. Because remember, it was Margaret Thatcher who kicked this whole thing off. She doesn't get much credit for it, but, you know, she put Britain on this path to seriously cut our carbon. But it has to be done in a way that is not going to destroy our economy, especially when we're competing with the very nefarious force of China. And right now, the Chinese politicians, actually even the Indian politicians, they're literally looking at Russia. They're just laughing hysterically, aren't they?
We've had Alok Sharma, who was our Mr. Green minister. Actually, there are videos of him blowing up our coal-fired power stations, saying they're all going to be gone by 2024. No, they're not going to all be gone by 2024 because they're all on standby now because the lights could go off at any time, and we are paying hundreds of millions of pounds to keep the coal-fired power stations on standby. We cannot just get rid of fossil fuels until we've got a plan B. Reality bias.
We want to pursue green policies, but at a rate that we can afford them.
Absolutely.
Because it's the difference between me freezing to death.
It works for the people of Britain.
Let me be very...
Hold on, Dan. Target. We do it.
Let's be very clear. We are less than 1% of the world's emissions. If you actually, if you want to stop global warming, you should be having this conversation with China, India, and America.
Absolutely.
That's the first thing.
And let's talk about so much of the work that we've done over the past 30 years. It's not as if we are starting this from a standing start. But look, I've got to show you this because Humza Useless made his big debut at First Minister's Questions today, but none of the politicians felt like playing to a gallery that was filled with, of course, eco-cretins protesting new oil and gas fields. Watch.
The next item of business is First Minister's Questions, and at question number 1 I call Douglas Ross.
Thank you very much, President.
We will suspend business at this point.
Wow. Now, that happened a further 4 times before the entire public gallery was emptied, except children on school trips. And once Parliament resumed, the kids got a first-class lesson on how not to lead a nation. That's because Yousaf has dropped the role of tourism minister while scandalously creating a minister for independence, which is, in essence, a taxpayer-funded campaign for Scottish separatism. So here he is, trying to justify that measure.
We need independence now more than ever before because we have more food banks in this country at any other time than ever before because of over a decade of austerity. So I would say to Douglas Ross, to the UK government, we will continue to advocate and to advance independence because we need it now more than ever before.
Now, Scottish Tory leader Douglas Ross rightly pointed out the SNP backbenchers were squirming as the full incompetence of scheming Sturgeon's apprentice was displayed before them. But let me lend some advice to Mr Useless. Drop the hard man Humza act. Think beyond the interests of your rabid base and actually start serving the people of Scotland. And you'll do that by stopping talking about separatism. Nigel Nelson, Sean Bailey, Alison Pearson, do stand by because coming up as King Charles receives a standing ovation for his speech to the German Parliament, while his sulking son, Harry, spends another day in court, should the royal family now abandon attempts at reconciliation with the shameless Sussexes? My superstar panel will return because we've got the bombshell results of a new People's poll. But next, as LGBT Labour encourage members to report a tweet liked by the party's MP Rosie Duffield, the author of said tweet and the legendary writer of Father Ted, he's an entertainment legend, isn't he, Graham Linehan, asks if Labour will tear themselves apart with their militant trans ideology. I'm going to tell you about this fascinating story, very disturbing actually, straight after the break.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion, 5 times the debate, and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end. I can't Britain's wink. Listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Cohen Mackenzie on the way, but first time for brilliant Father Ted creator and women's rights campaigner Graham Linehan. Now, the left's intolerance has been laid bare once more after Labour MP Rosie Duffield was again targeted by the party's militant LGBT wing for simply liking a tweet. Duffield, a lone women's rights advocate in the party, showed support for this post from TV hero Graham, which disputed Eddie Izzard's claim that he was a, quote, trans hero who would have been killed under the Nazi regime. Izzard made the comments in 2021. Watch.
I consider being trans a superhuman, a superhero thing. And if we go back to the 1930s, if I'd been in Nazi Germany, I would have been murdered for saying that I was trans.
But overnight, it was revealed that Labour's LGBT arm had taken the, quote, rare step of encouraging members to report Rosie Duffield to party bosses for, quote, demonising the trans community. But the MP hit back, except this isn't rare at all. They've been doing this for about 3 years. Why else do all my Labour colleagues still remain so deathly silent? Well, the comedy legend who originally got Labour's LGBT extremists into quite a spin joins me now. Graham Linehan, great to speak to you. Looking at this treatment of Rosie Duffield, is the entire Labour Party at risk of eating themselves alive with the trans dogma in the same way Nicola Sturgeon's SNP did?
Well, it's hard to say. They've been making a few noises recently about reversing course on all this stuff. I think Keir Starmer said that self-ID wasn't a priority. But unfortunately, they still have within the Labour Party authoritarian lunatics who think that any mention of the word trans that isn't entirely supportive and spreading the misinformation about that group of people is somehow evil and bigoted and must be punished. But I think there's a few other things going on with this as well. One of the things people forget is that when the Labour Party were going through a very kind of convulsive anti-Semitism row, Rosie was one of the people who stood up and defended her Jewish colleagues and made a plea to sort it out. I don't think they've ever forgiven her for that. And I think that some of the people who are going after her are using the excuse of trans issues and this entirely harmless tweet to continue to harass her, which they, as Rosie says, they've been doing for 3 years. You know, it's hardly controversial to say that a blonde, white, straight male would not have been a target for the Nazis.
Well, of course, but Graham, Eddie Izzard has made himself this lightning rod for these issues within the Labour Party because, of course, at one point he actually wanted to be able to stand on an all-women's shortlist in order to try and become an MP.
Well, to be fair to him, that might have been someone putting him forward or something like that. I'd like to think there's a little bit of a conscience within Eddie that realises that what he's doing is hugely offensive to women, is hugely sexist. He's appropriating women's reality. He's making an absolute fool of himself by claiming to be a trans person when he is a fully intact, straight, white male. He is the most privileged group on earth, and he's pretending, and I think this is what's most particularly egregious about this thing, he's pretending that he would have been a target of the Nazis. That's outrageous. That's insulting to Jewish people, and it's insulting to the gay people who died under the Nazi regime. So the move by the LGBT group, or LGBT Labour, it's entirely cynical. And another thing that I don't want to go too much on about this, but another thing that happened is in an online discussion about the issue afterwards, the comments of lesbians and bisexual women were being deleted by LGBT Labour, because they do not want people knowing what's going on about this issue.
But Graham, this is happening all the time. You know, at the top of the show, we were talking about this very disturbing new policy exchange report showing the gender extremism sweeping schools at the moment, and parents now not being told when their young children and teenagers are being encouraged to change gender. And actually, so much of this trans extremism, Graham, is just out and out homophobic. It's anti-gay and it's anti-lesbian.
There is no more homophobic statement than trans women are women. Because when you say that trans women are women, you are saying that they are women in the literal meaning of the word. That means that if a lesbian does not want to go out with a male-bodied person who identifies as trans, they are automatically considered a bigot. And that's why you've had lesbians lying down in front of pride marches. That's why you have, the other day, I don't know if you saw over the weekend, a whole street closed down to host a kind of police-observed rave outside a meeting of lesbians. Because if there's one thing trans rights activists hate more than anything else, it's lesbians. Because lesbians have boundaries, and they don't like lesbians having boundaries.
Yeah, and I saw J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling was tweeting about that, wasn't she? And you know what? We have to say, don't we? Huge credit to J.K. Rowling, huge credit to Rosie Duffield, because these craven people in the extreme trans lobby try and shut them down in so many different ways, but they're so brave, they're so bold, and they won't shut up. And neither were you, Graham Linehan, and you know, you lost your career to speak out about this, and we so appreciate your voice on this as always. So that is the TV legend, women's rights advocate, the creator of Father Ted, Graham Linehan. And the IT crowd as well. My goodness, how could I not mention that one? But coming up in Uncancelled, as a Polish woman claims on mainstream US TV to be Madeleine McCann, should British police continue pumping money into the search for the missing girl? Well, former editor of The Sun, Calvin McKenzie, has very strong views on this, and he's going to weigh in soon. But next in the media buzz, as Prince Harry's drive to silence the British press threatens to overshadow his father's debut on the international stage as king, should the royal family now ditch any hopes of reconciliation with the Duke of Delusion and his wife? My superstar panel have plenty to say on this. They'll be here as well as actually the newspaper front pages straight after the break.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
So breaking tonight, a Manhattan grand jury has just voted to indict the former President Donald Trump over the hush money paid to porn star Stormy Daniels. Of course, Trump was predicting that this was going to happen just a couple of weeks ago. This will dominate the American news cycle, at least over the next couple of days. We will talk about that in just a little moment. The news has just emerged in the past few minutes. But first, let's return to tomorrow's news tonight in our media buzz. And more front pages have just been delivered. And the Metro leads on cowardly gunman Thomas Cashman, who has been found guilty of murdering 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Korbel in Liverpool. The paper also carries beaming pictures of Charles as the King of Comedy during his Royal German tour. The Daily Mail also leads with the conviction of Pratt-Korbel's killer, alongside a sickening photo of Cashman pulling a gun pose next to a waxwork of the late Queen. What an absolute scumbag. The Daily Telegraph also follows on the death of Olivia Pratt-Korbel with a quote by the Merseyside police chief blaming drug dealers and users for the tragic killing, and I absolutely agree with that. The paper also reports on the announcement of Rishi Sunak's independent review of sex education in schools after the revelations that there was widespread teaching of gender fluidity as fact. And, of course, we spoke about that at the top of the show. My superstar panel return now. Top Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Now, King Charles continued his first official state visit in Germany today, receiving a standing ovation as he became the first ever British monarch to speak in Germany's parliament, impressively conducting most of his speech in German. Meanwhile, hapless Harry snuck in through a side entrance for another day at the High Court as he continues his obsessive battle to destroy the free press in the UK. A brand new People's poll commissioned by GB News has found that just 8% of the British public would prefer Harry and Meghan to move back to the UK, compared to nearly half who want them to stay in their self-imposed exile in California. So there we have it. Britain has spoken, Alison Pearson. So actually, the royal family should be looking at this poll, shouldn't they, and thinking Charles has done the right thing by backing away here.
Yeah, I think my favourite line of the week, if not of the year so far, was him saying that he was too busy to see Harry. Presumably, been walking the Jack Russells and too busy to see.
Because, of course, his state visit to France had just been cancelled, Alison. We know he had nothing in the diary, yet he still didn't want to see Harry.
Still too busy. Yeah, I'd have Meghan and Harry arroldited to the sun lounges in Montecito, Dan, I must say. I mean, I think they have caused tremendous harm, and I did write a piece about how I would be booing if they returned to the...
So would you really?
Absolutely, I would be. And what was very funny was lots of Telegraph readers wrote and said that we should have pick a spot on the coronation route where we could assemble to boo. So any GB News viewers who want to join us in the...
I think there'll be a few of them there.
in the boo, you come and join us in the boo. In fact, somebody pointed out that when I think it was Emperor Hirohito came to London for a state visit, that lots of the military turned their backs along the mile. I'm incensed with them, Dan. I know that you share this view.
Absolutely.
The misery and the stress they caused to the late Queen.
Yeah.
The Oprah Winfrey interview went out when Prince Philip was in hospital a few weeks away from death. He and the Queen, the late Queen, had shown nothing but kindness and decency, particularly to Meghan.
They both died believing that the world thought that the royal family was full of racists, and it was Harry and Meghan who allowed that to happen, with the assistance of Oprah Winfrey, who I don't forgive, by the way.
No, absolutely. And I think now we want to have a special family moment on the Buckingham Palace balcony. You think they don't seem to actually comprehend how furious and rejected the British people feel by them, I think.
He doesn't get it, does he, Nigel Nelson? Should we be booing Harry?
I wouldn't mind booing Harry. I mean, I'd be quite happy to actually never hear from him again. What I would say, though, is that a reconciliation with his father and brother, I think, should happen. They're a family. I know it's to do with the monarchy, the royal family, or whatever, but they're also just a family. And it'd be nice to know that the King and William could actually talk to him again.
Sean Bailey?
I'm with Nigel. I've been consistent all the way through. They are a family, and I get it. Charles, as king, might want to teach a lesson or two and be too busy and refuse entry to some high-profile events. But ultimately, he's a grandfather, and he should be making some kind of movements in the background to have a relationship with his grandparents. I personally think it's a great privilege for any child to have a relationship with their grandparents, and he should be trying to make that happen. But he does need to make Harry aware of the damage he's caused, the pain he's caused. And of course, Harry has decided that his children are not to be royals. I wonder how his children will feel about that in the future. Again, they should have a relationship with their grandfather so they can work that through.
Well, that's not right, Sean, is it? Because they have recently said that they're going to be called Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet.
Well,
so actually what they want is they want to be able to badmouth the royal family whilst kind of taking all the benefits of the titles.
Well, what you're saying is obviously technically correct, but the point is you cannot punish the children for the sins of the father. If they want, rightly they would be called princess and whatever. They should maintain that until they are old enough to say otherwise. And if I was their grandfather, I would make that happen. Harry and Meghan, slightly different approach.
OK, now look, breaking tonight, as I just mentioned, Donald Trump has been indicted by a Manhattan grand jury after a probe into hush money paid to porn star Stormy Daniels. He becomes the first former US president to face criminal charges ever, even as he makes another run for the White House. This has been reported now by multiple major US outlets. The charges arising from an investigation led by Democratic Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg could reshape the 2024 presidential race. Trump previously said he would continue campaigning for the Republican Party's nomination if charged with a crime. So look, Alison, this is literally broken in the last couple of minutes. A monumental story that will dominate the US news cycle. I mean, when Trump tweeted that he thought, well, he didn't tweet it, he put it on Truth Social, and he put it on Truth Social that he thought this arrest was coming, Elon Musk replied, he's just won the presidency. I mean, there's a real view that this establishment witch hunt of Donald Trump could actually end up benefiting his campaign.
Yes, possibly. I'm a Ron DeSantis person, so I'd be very pleased to see Trump elbowed out. I think DeSantis is a more impressive figure. I don't know, Sean, what do you think about the Trump?
I think the challenge for Trump is he's been divisive all along. It's going to culminate in this, but he has played a blinder in certain people's mind because he's constantly said they don't respect us. This is a witch hunt against us, and there's a large proportion of the American electorate who believe him, who will support him. And the more he's pursued, the more they will support him. So this could end up benefiting. But if he has any care for the Republicans, he could consider standing back because they have.
He's not going to do that, though.
I put the notion up there. But they have another very good candidate, and he might cause.
But why should he do that? I'm sorry. Why should he do that, Nigel Nelson? There are going to be so many Trump supporters who are saying this is absolute madness. This is a payment made between two adults. It happened before he was president. You know, this is an attempt to try and stop Trump becoming president again, and it could backfire.
It could backfire. I think you're absolutely right. The biggest danger here is you make a martyr out of Trump. And that is exactly what his supporters want. However, let's see what comes out of a future trial. Once you get through into the rather tawdry details of his relationship with Stormy Daniels, the American people might view him in a different way.
I don't think they'll care, Dan. People respond to headlines. And again, I go back to my theme. Trump has played a blinder. He keeps predicting what they will do. So his supporters are like, he told us about this. These people are bang out of order. And also, that's how they act.
You know, this could have a fundamental change for the way that America does politics too, because really both sides of American politics realised after President Nixon that pardoning him was really the right thing to do, because otherwise what were you going to do? Tear the country apart? And I mean, there's a lot to come on this. It's expected to be announced in the coming days, but I think, you know, this could be a real boost for Donald Trump's presidency.
The problem with all this, they've kept Trump relevant. If they had just tried to defeat him politically, had shoved him around, but going after him in this manner has kept him relevant.
OK. Sean Bailey, Alison Pearson, Nigel Nelson on that. Breaking news, let me just repeat it for you again. A Manhattan grand jury has voted to indict Donald J. Trump over this hush money paid to Stormy Daniels, allegedly. And this is the first time a current or former president has ever faced criminal charges. So a huge story breaking out of New York right now. But coming up, as King Charles receives a standing ovation from the German Parliament while a wayward Harry scuttles into court through a side entrance, is the monarch deserving of a proper prize? Find out as we reveal tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But next, in Uncancelled, as a Polish woman claims on mainstream US TV to be Madeleine McCann, should British police continue pumping money into the search for the missing girl? Former editor of The Sun, Calvin McKenzie, weighs in on that and this Donald Trump breaking news straight after the break.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's time now for Uncancelled, where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. But before we get to the Madeleine McCann scandal breaking tonight, as we've just been learning, Donald Trump has been indicted by a Manhattan grand jury after a probe into hush money paid to the porn star Stormy Daniels. He becomes the first former US president to ever face criminal charges. Calvin McKenzie joins me now. Calvin, look, Elon Musk said this criminal charge would actually end up making Trump president again. Do you agree with that, or do you think he's in trouble here?
No. I don't agree with that. And just to correct one impression, he's not being charged with handing over $130,000 to his lawyer to pay Stormy Daniels. He is almost certainly going to be charged with actually putting that $130,000 in his books as legal fees rather than effectively a bribe. And in New York City, that is a crime. It's not a crime in every state in America, actually, curiously enough. So that is quite a serious. And the other thing he might be charged with is the suggestion that he was trying to fool the voters by paying this money so that they didn't discover that he'd had an affair. Because bizarrely, although America is a shocking place in some respects, they are quite Christian in other areas. So an affair with the Stormy Daniels figure, if that blew up in the middle of the campaign, may have derailed him completely. And I don't agree that this is good for him. So I don't agree, I think, with you, and I don't agree with Elon Musk about that issue. I think
but you can see, Calvin, that Trump
and America has moved on from Trump.
Well,
America has
you
moved
say
on
that.
from Trump.
You say that, but look at the polling in the Republican primary field. He's soaring ahead. He's going to be up against a whole load of candidates. Even Ron DeSantis isn't coming close to him he's coming close if it's a head-to-head, but when you put in a whole load of other candidates, Trump is well ahead in the field, and his supporters, Calvin, are going to think this is a witch hunt. This is a witch hunt.
Honestly, in all honesty, I hope we're not stupid people. This is not a witch hunt. If you pay $130,000 to your lawyer to pay a porn star so that she stays stum, so it doesn't blow your presidential election campaign to smithereens, that is not, and only in America, in my view, only in America would somebody still be standing for presidency, having been through this kind of scandal. Imagine that over here. Supposing, for instance, Keir Starmer was found out to have paid £130,000 to a porn star. He'd be gone. He'd be gone with the first word that appeared in the Sun. I mean, honestly, I find it incredible that anybody could think that this was a defense of somebody that you want to lead the free world. We've got Ukraine, we've got inflation, we've got all kinds of terrible things going on in the world, and yet somebody is saying, this is where I disagree with Elon Musk, that this strengthens Trump's ambitions to be the president. I find that absolutely incredible.
Well, the thing is, you might say that, and that may be how you feel, and it's how a lot of people feel, especially over here. But the reality is this is going to be up to Republican primary voters.
Yeah, look, I do buy that. There is some kind of magic about Trump. No matter how many whoppers he tells, no matter how many bad decisions he makes, somehow he is Teflon-like. I don't know how this is achieved, but at least in DeSantis, we now have somebody who can compete on the right of the Republican Party for their hearts. And so if Trump runs in November, I would be absolutely amazed. Now, I've been wrong, as you know, on a number of facts over the years, right? So I'm no genius. I'm no
We will
mystic
see.
Mac.
Time will tell. But
I find it incredible.
OK, but of course, just repeating the news, if you've just tuned in, the New York grand jury has found against Donald Trump, which means he'll be the first either former or sitting US president to ever face criminal charges. Now, look, moving on, Calvin, the Polish woman Julia Vendal, whose dubious claim to be Madeleine McCann 16 years on from her disappearance, has caused a social media frenzy. Vendal appeared on the hit US TV show Dr. Phil, where the 21-year-old claimed to remember details from Maddie's tragic trip to Portugal and claimed that she shares distinctive features with the then 3-year-old. Watch this.
Madeleine has this defect in the iris, and you have that same phenomenon, right?
I mean, very faded, a little faded now, but yes.
If you provide a DNA sample to Scotland Yard, for example, are you willing to do that?
If DNA will show that my roots come from Britain, I will do this.
OK, so Carmen, I've got two big questions for you here. Firstly, were we just watching Madeleine McCann or a crank? And secondly, should the police continue to pump hundreds of thousands of pounds into this investigation?
Well, that was gut churning. That, I mean, imagine you're the parents, you're Madeleine McCann's parents, whose life has been a nightmare, literally this last, kind of 15 years or so, I think. I mean, one of the interesting things, that girl is 21, Madeleine McCann will be 19 now, you know, so, I mean, the idea that she would be flown to America for a chat show, I mean, Dr. Phil has been going for, must be 3 decades now, and the idea that the producers would pay for her to go over there, I mean, I find it a shocking circus. And on the question of whether more money should be spent, every so often Scotland Yard asks for more money. And the reason they ask for more money is they think they're getting closer to finding out actually who did it and potentially where in Portugal or somewhere Madeleine McCann's body is. I think she has been part of our lives now for the thick end of nearly 2 decades. I'm in favour of one last amount of money being spent in order to try and lift the burden from the McCann parents, which I think must have been a shocking rock to have all this time. I can't begin to think what life must have been like.
It was interesting, Calvin, when we polled our viewers on this earlier in the week in The Clash, overwhelmingly they did not want any more money pumped in.
Right. Well, look, I can understand it. We have spent millions, and there are a lot of cases, unsolved cases in the UK, which haven't had 10 pence spent on them. I do understand that, and for some reason, every so often, there's a kind of feeling which seems to be hostile towards the McCann parents. I've no idea why that should be the case. This must be the biggest nightmare any parent could face. So personally, I am in favour of one more. Well,
they got their life sentence, didn't they? They got their life sentence all of those years ago in '97. Calvin McKenzie, great to chat tonight. We'll speak on Monday. But it's time now to reveal tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Alison Pearson, who's your nominee for your first Greatest Britain?
It's going to be King Charles III for a fantastic first state visit to Germany, conducted while his younger son was basically taking pot shots at him. So well done, Charlie.
Sean Bailey, your nominee.
My nominee is Captain Hannah Napton, who has been the first female soldier to pass the para regiment's entry test called P Company, renowned for being one of the toughest physical challenges in the army. She did it all on her own, no quota, no rule change. She just made it a phenomenal achievement.
Wow.
And Nigel Nelson, your nominee.
Yeah, mine's Keir Starmer, who today showed how council tax could be lower if windfall tax on energy giants was higher. I just wish he'd also promised to freeze council tax when he's PM.
Well, look, I'm going to go with Alison Pearson and King Charles III, because there were a lot of people who were saying that after the death of the late Queen Elizabeth II, there'd be no interest in the British royal family. People wouldn't talk about the international tours conducted by the new monarch. But I have to say, he's done a great job. He's got headlines all over the world, and it's been a very good start for him on the international stage as king. Alison Pearson, what about your Union Jackass nominee?
It's going to be Nish Kumar, the alleged comedian, who has been extremely unpleasant about our very, very nice Prime Minister, who I don't think is a coconut. And I think it's just been... Also, I think that Nish Kumar is going to take this role on Pointless, which is a lovely, friendly show and should not be defaced by political poison.
Have a listen to what Nish Kumar said.
If you're a young Asian, you too can be Prime Minister.
And he went on and on and on, Alison. And the reality is that he is about to host a mainstream BBC quiz show. If it was the hypocrisy is off the scale. It's off the scale. Yeah. Sean Bailey, your nominee.
My nominee is Hamza Yousaf, incoming leader of the Scottish National Party, for creating a post of independence minister, spending taxpayers' money on his political campaign, which is disgraceful, because he said he'd be for all Scots. And remember, they voted to stay part of the Union. So this is the beginning of what I think is going to be a terrible leadership campaign. Labour and the Conservatives are happy to have him.
Well, indeed, especially given that one of his first moves as First Minister was to demote Kate Forbes, who had just received 48% of the vote from his own party. Personally, I think that shows he's on some sort of kamikaze mission. Nigel Nelson, your Union Jackass.
It has to be Prince Harry for coming back to Britain when he didn't need to grandstand before the media that he's trying to trash.
Do you know what? I'm really torn because, I mean, all three could win. But I have to say I'm going to go with Sean Bailey and Humza Useless, as I call him, because I really don't think we have seen such an incompetent leader make so many mistakes. And don't come back with me saying Liz Truss, because she didn't. You know, there was a campaign against her. These self-inflicted wounds by Useless, I think, are going to be very costly for the SNP. But look, Alison Pearson, so great to have you tonight. Loved having you back in the studio. And Sean Bailey and Nigel Nelson too. Thank you for your company all week. It has been an incredible week of shows. We're back again Monday night at 9 p.m. Remember, Headliners is up next. Good night.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us four, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion, 5 times the debate, and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end. I can't Britain's wink. Listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Good evening. In a moment, headliners. But first, let's bring you the latest news headlines. And we begin this bulletin with some breaking news that's just come to us from the United States. Donald Trump has been indicted by a grand jury in Manhattan in New York and is now the first former or sitting US president to face criminal charges. That's after an investigation into alleged hush money payments given to adult film actress Stormy Daniels during his 2016 election campaign. These charges come just days after the former president launched his 2024 Republican nomination campaign in Texas. He condemned the investigation, claiming he's the most innocent man in US history. And some other breaking news this evening as well. Turkey's parliament has approved a bill to allow Finland to join NATO, as Ukraine's president has marked 400 days of the war today. For more details on that as we bring you news tomorrow on GB News. Turkey was the last of 30 members in the Western Defence Alliance to ratify Finland's membership after Hungary approved a similar bill earlier in the week. Finland and Sweden applied to join the alliance last year in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but the process was held up by Turkey and Hungary. Now, in UK news, the mother of a 9-year-old girl who was shot in her own home in Liverpool last year says she's ecstatic that her daughter's murderer is now behind bars. Olivia Pratt-Corbell was killed last August when Thomas Cashman chased down a convicted drug dealer to her front door. Merseyside police released CCTV footage of the chase. Olivia was killed shortly after these moments that you can see if you're watching on television. The 34-year-old has been found guilty of her murder and of the attempted murder of Joseph Nee. Cheryl Corbell held her daughter's pink teddy up as she left the court today. Now, His Majesty the King has made history by becoming the first British monarch to address the German Parliament, giving a speech in both German and English. King Charles made the invasion of Ukraine a focus of his speech, describing the war as unprovoked and later telling Ukrainian refugees that he was praying for them. He also condemned what he called the unimaginable suffering of innocent people. The Defence Secretary Ben Wallace has addressed an alarming rise in sex offence cases within the military, saying that things are changing. He said the rise is due to victims feeling more confident about coming forward. 300 Sexual Offences Act investigations were launched by the Royal Military Police last year. That's almost a 50% rise on the year before. And that comes as a team of inspectors detailed alleged reports of racist, homophobic and misogynistic behaviour in the Fire and Rescue Service in England over the last 5 years. Now, with the Easter holidays just around the corner, there could be travel disruption for many. Security guards at London's Heathrow Airport have planned to go on strike now for 10 days. That's after last-ditch talks failed to resolve a dispute over pay. 1,400 Unite members will walk out from tomorrow until Easter Sunday. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. You're with GB News, the People's Channel. It's time for Headliners.
Hello, I'm Leo Kearson. Welcome to Headliners. Joining me tonight to go through tomorrow's top news stories are Josh Howie, who's a comedian, it says on his LinkedIn profile, and Nick Dixon, who's a better comedian and substantially easier to work with. Anyway, how are you doing, both of you?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great.
You're having a good day, right?
Oh, totally.
That's the first nice thing you've said about me, but it had to come at the expense of someone else, sadly. But
yeah, that's how
we
it
just
works.
cut, by the way, to an empty sofa.
That's traditional from Eunice.
That represents our careers after this. Carry on.
Anyway, let's go through the front pages of tomorrow's papers. We've got the Daily Mail with monster whose tears were only for himself, not the little Olivia, the innocent he murdered. The Guardian has families face a £700 hit with wave of tax and price rises. The Express has, yes, justice for Olivia, sounding strangely upbeat there. The Mirror has justice for Olivia. The Eye has pensions blow for people in their 40s, work until age 70. And finally, the Daily Star has psycho killer chatbots are befuddled by Wordle. And those were your front pages. We're going to start the show off with some breaking news. It's unprecedented, so it's missed the front pages because it's only just come out. But tell us about it, Josh.
Yeah, Trump, it looks like he's going to be indicted. That literally just came out, so I don't know if that means that all of these newspapers that are about to go through, we just throw them all away and go home. Yeah, so he had an affair, or he allegedly had an affair with this adult film star, Stormy Daniels.
Stormy Daniels.
Big fan
don't pretend you don't have an
No, I am a big fan of her early work. It all got a bit avant-garde afterwards. But what he's never admitted to having the affair. But what he has admitted is that he paid her off with $130,000,
which could be seen as break campaign rules.
Well, this is the reason why he's going to be indicted. Is it's because the money came from he claimed them as legal expenses,
right?
And that is against the law.
Right, so it's marking things down. I mean, as a comedian, Nick, you must have marked things down on your tax return.
Yeah, I haven't paid tax for many, many years. No, I'm always very, very honest about it, and it's good because then they give you those COVID payments, and it's good to have been honest. Anyway, this story, I mean, someone gave me the wrong story, then I had the right story. It doesn't really matter because it's all the same. It's all the Dems and the Blob, the US version of the Blob, trying to get Trump on anything. Yeah. None of his supporters care. The Dems all hate him anyway. It's not going to make any difference to voting. Some people say it's going to increase his vote. I don't even know if it's going to do that. But some people think it's like 4D chess. They're like, oh, they want DeSantis, so they do this. Or they want us to think they want DeSantis. I'm not sure it even is. I think they just like to harass Trump,
but this seems to be, it's about the sort of fifth time they've tried to bring Trump down with various things. They've searched searched his home.
Russia hoax.
Yeah, the Russia hoax.
Failed impeachments, two of them.
But these things are ongoing in terms of the supposed election subversion, overturning the 2020 result, the classified records. So those things, and his business dealings, and he's got a defamation suit. Those things are all ongoing. But this here is a definitive, actual.
Yeah, but no one cares. No one thought.
Well, some people do care.
No one cares.
Talking about it.
No. It's good to talk about. I mean, it's not going to change any voters' minds who already hate. You hate him already, so you still hate him.
No, I don't hate
like him. I still like him.
Nick, don't you think this is just going to invigorate Trump's campaign and invigorate his base to come out and support him?
That's fine. I agree with that, but that's not the point here. The point is he did something wrong. Are you saying he didn't do something wrong?
No, I'm saying they've tried to get Trump on everything. This is a billionaire real estate guy in New York, and the things they found in him are so minor.
Yeah. So this is minor, is it?
Hunter Biden, this is a slow afternoon for Hunter Biden.
I told you. 130,000
Hunter Biden laptop, the big guy, the China thing, the Ukraine thing.
But you're doing whataboutery now.
I am, and I love it.
He has committed a crime. Why are you sort of going, oh, it's 4D chess?
Because it's a misdemeanor. Any civilian did it, it would be a misdemeanor. No one gets punished that much for this kind of thing.
Has he done wrong?
He's
the ex-president of the United States.
He's done something minorly wrong. Come on, John, you're not that naive. In this level of politics, this is very minor. I don't care. You can care.
Nancy Pelosi's millions that she's made.
It's not great.
Well, and if she's done wrong, she should be indicted as well.
It's not ideal to pay off.
I'm just saying he's done something wrong.
But don't you think this will play into his victimhood complex?
Absolutely.
And he'll be able to paint himself as a martyr with some justification.
Absolutely. And he's already raised millions of dollars. I'm not arguing about any of those points. They're all valid. But to say that it's nothing is wrong. He has committed a crime.
I mean, the final point about this is from a voter's point of view. So Donald Trump paid Stormy Daniels £130,000. Bill Clinton paid Paula Jones £850,000. So who's the better negotiator? Who's the better leader?
Who was
Can I say
who was better? Stormy Daniels was obviously.
Can I say one last thing though? The only thing it seems to have done is it seems to have confused DeSantis into attacking Trump, and most people think that on the sort of that side think that was a mistake. Right. So it may have done a little bit of work in confusing DeSantis and damaging his campaign a little bit.
They're playing them off against each other.
Maybe.
Anyway, let's go to the actual front pages. What does The Guardian run with, Nick?
Well, they've got families face £700 hit with wave of tax and price rises, and this is just, it's going to hit families around 50 who are on like 50,000 income, and they're talking about it's going to cost them £700 a year. Council tax bills will increase by £99 as well from April 1st. This comes from CEBR Economic Consultancy, and they've just gone into how this tax thing is going to hit the average family. And we're meant to be a comedy show, and this is probably the hardest possible story to make funny. Even like really bad things at a certain level, you might be able to make funny if they're like really stupid policies. But this is like small but crushing changes in tax to families. So I've got nothing, Josh.
Well, no, it's just because inflation. A lot of things that we pay for in terms of contracts, mobile phone bills, TV, everything is connected to inflation. So come April 6th, new tax year, they get to reset their prices, and they're resetting them according to what inflation was plus whatever the percentage point was.
Because they want to gouge us for money.
Yeah, absolutely. And now they're just going to whack it all up, and like £700. It's a lot of money.
But isn't the real problem that the government is just growing? Government year on year takes a bigger share of GDP, and we're just seeing it grow and grow. No government ever votes to reduce its own power.
Right, except arguably Liz Truss, to make a smaller government, and you saw what happened to her.
Yeah, the blob. The blob didn't like it.
Well,
smaller government for rich people. But there's also quite an interesting story here about Putin's global cyber warfare. I think we all knew about it, but this is sort of much more investigative story, and it literally taking up just entire blocks within Moscow. And it's a huge deal. And to see they're tapped into Nick's feed, and they're just pumping that stuff in there.
Well, Russia has the next 50 years of war planned out on everything, on cyber, on possible assassinations.
They don't seem to have planned the actual war very well.
They mess that up. No, these are all strategies and theories. But, it's like Mike Tyson says, it all goes out the window when you get punched in the face by Ukraine. So,
yeah. I mean, we used to think that Russia had the best, second best military in the world. At the moment, it's got the second best military in Ukraine. But anyway, what's in the cover of the Times, Josh?
Retire early if you did not go to university. This is actually a really good idea. This is people who go, who basically have jobs like involving actual labour, very much unlike us, of course, who just drink milk and water and get away with it. Yeah. Could retire earlier, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I got a friend of mine who's a joiner. He's 50 years old. He's a great joiner, but boy, is he destroyed. Like his knees are destroyed. I mean, the physical labour of working those days it takes a really big toll.
His knees are destroyed. So he's one of these people who should have actually been lifting with his back.
Yeah, well, no, because you're spending a lot of time on your But it's I think it's a really good idea actually. So yeah, there's another story we've got later about universities and maybe they're not worth the price. This would suggest another reason why actually, if you want to just. By the way, my friend is doing very well for himself and has got a much nicer house than I do. But the point is, there is a price to be paid for that physically. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand if you've done hard manual labour, you do deserve a break. However, I'm a bit peeved that the state pension age must rise from 69 or to 69 or 70 for anyone born after 1979. I feel like, why am I always being attacked for being born after...
How old are you?
Much younger than you, just very young.
But when was your birth? What year?
Many years after that. Yeah, I never say because I'm in showbiz.
And also, how much do you weigh?
Yeah, I'm working on it. But but it's kind of annoying that it's our generation my generation, not so much you guys, but at least we're beating the French, Leo, because they want to retire, as you know, at about 39 or something.
Yeah. After doing those difficult 3